This empty chair represents the addict who died today, not knowing recovery was possible.
Hi, I'm Phil Leahy, and welcome to another edition of The Empty Chair, Exposing Addiction. And tonight's show is a lot different than anything we've done. Ever since we've been doing the show, Colleen and I have always tried to put a positive spin on addiction and recovery and so forth like that. We talk about treatment and everything. But tonight, we're going to put a face, we're going to put a name on the empty chair, because we find it very important. This is a big part of addiction. Unfortunately, this is a huge part of addiction, the ones who don't make it. So we're going to get right into it. Cole's going to introduce our guest.
Hi, my name is Colleen, and I'm an addict in recovery, very, very grateful addict in recovery. The show is like really important. Like, you know, it's called the Empty Chair, Exposing Addiction, and the empty chair represents the addict that died not knowing recovery is possible. And yeah, we try and put like a positive, spin on this show a lot. But the reality of the disease of addiction is that it's progressive, incurable, and fatal. And addicts die every day. And Dave has been nice enough to come on, and he had a brother, John, who died from the disease of addiction. And, so today this empty chair is representing him. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. I got chills already. I just wanted to say thank you for coming on the show and just telling us about your brother and your story. It really takes a lot of courage to do that, because there's a big stigma attached to everything. No one wants to talk about the reality of it. And just the fact that you're here and that you're doing that speaks volumes, about you. And I really appreciate that very, very much. So I don't know if you want to just tell us a little bit about, what happened with your brother or...
Sure. My name is Dave LaCroix, and I guess really what I want to do is tell you a brother's perspective. Sure. of someone that has this disease that you call addiction. My perspective starts out, being the younger, loving brother, to be honest with you, and looking up to my brother John and idolizing him, and really just always wanted to be around him and do the things he did. And growing up, that's the way it was. There were five kids in our family, and I was the fourth youngest, and I looked up to my older brothers. I think many people do that. And somewhere along the line, John got involved with drugs and alcohol, and just living that kind of life. And it was something that had been part of his life since he was young, a young teenager. And so as a teacher up through in high school, I talk to 14, 15, 16-year-old kids all the time, and I always share with them. And if I have the opportunity, I've come to be able to share with them a little bit about my story, in the hopes that maybe they can see some of the issues that I had to deal with and maybe learn from them. So I'm just going to kind of share the same story that I share with my kids, in the hope that maybe someone will watch the show and maybe be in the same spot, or at least gain something from it. So that's really why I'm here. I'm not going to lie, it's very uncomfortable. It's not an easy thing to talk about, and I know that that's one of the goals of your show is to bring that out, and let people talk about it. And I understand that, and I can tell you that it's not easy. Mm-hmm. So it's not with reservation at all that I'm here, but at the same time, the scars are wide open. Right. If that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
And just so everybody realizes, when you lose someone like that, you're right, the scars are there forever. The pain is there forever. Obviously, it minimizes over years and years. Now, your brother died 11 years ago?
Yes, he died in 2001, October 20th, 2001. Right.
Now, we were talking before, and you basically mentioned that he never really developed a lot of clean time, but, and I'll tell you, I did notice that you know, we're always saying that there's not enough we can do for addicts now and so forth like that. But I'm listening to some of the experiences you had, and all of a sudden I see in 10 or 11 years we've had progressed quite a bit. So tell us something like, what did you guys try to do, you know, for your brother? You knew he had a problem. So what were you trying to do?
Right. You know, I have to admit that growing up in a family, I mean, there are issues all the time, and sometimes there are good things going on, and sometimes there are difficult things going on. So nothing seems strange to me. I can just say that. Nothing ever seemed strange. I mean, he was my big brother, and that was fine. But he was constantly getting into trouble and not doing well in school, and there were the issues with you know, parents and teenagers that I think is very typical. At least it was typical in my household. And as time went on, we all came to realize that John was partying a little harder than we would have liked. And obviously sometimes those party situations, you know, turned into ugly events. And as most families do, or at least I felt like most families do, is you kind of take care of your stuff at home, and you hope for the best, and you try to move on. Well, with John, we tried at one point to really get him some help. And the truth of the matter is, I felt like I didn't have enough information. We did sit John down, and through the help of a priest that we think highly of, we all sat down and we had what we thought was an intervention. I mean, nowadays there are shows about interventions, and you can watch a lot of stuff, and you can YouTube it, and you get a lot of information. At the time, I didn't feel like I had access to that. It might have been out there, but I just wasn't aware of it. So we sat down, and John admitted he had a problem, and we all knew he had a problem. He knew he had a problem, and the one thing is that our family let him know that we loved him. So looking back now, I know that we did it right. We did it with love. But I was so concerned as his brother, because I knew that if he didn't accept the help that we wanted to get him, that it was going to be very possible that he was just going to push me away. And I didn't want to get pushed away. There were family members that refused to be part of it because they didn't want to be pushed away, but it was a legitimate concern. And you know, I'm proud of the fact that we stuck to it, and we got him to answer, you know, to answer to himself and to us that yes, he had an issue. The problem that I had is that I didn't know how to get him the help. And looking back now, obviously I didn't do the right things. I did get him to an AA meeting, and him and I sat there, and I remember that experience, and it was very awkward for me, and it was awkward for him, and we just sat in a meeting, and I thought that's what recovery was. He agreed to go to a meeting, and I thought that was it. He's going to a meeting, everything's going to be great. It wasn't the case. Fast forward probably 2 years after that, I guess I got the dreaded call. I got the phone call from my brother-in-law that Lawrence General Hospital had called. John was in the emergency room, and someone needed to go pick him up. And my brother-in-law asked me to go because he had a baby at home, and I said, no problem. Done it a million times. John's been in scrapes, and you know, for whatever reason, I was just thinking they weren't going to release him, you know, because he had been drinking, drugging. I have to admit, I tend to deny the drugging part. The drinking part was acceptable to me, but I try to pretend like drugs weren't involved. They obviously were. So I show up at the emergency room, and this is what I try to tell the kids, because I try to get them to understand what it felt like. I should have known, but I didn't know. I didn't expect to hear what I heard, and I'll never forget that girl's face when she told me. Actually, I should back up a little bit. When I walked in and I said, I'm here to pick up John LaCroix, I saw her on her face, she began to look around, and I should have picked up on it, but I didn't pick up on it. And she said, come with me, come with me. And she didn't bring me into a room. She brought me into a soft room with soft chairs. And she said, you know, this is probably 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. She says, your brother passed away. He came in, and we did everything we could, and I don't even know what she said. And I, what, huh? And it hit me like a ton of, it was, I'll never forget the feeling. I'll never forget the heaviness on my heart. I didn't know what to do. But I do remember this. In that moment, I thought, the one thought that I really had was, how am I going to tell my mother?
Yeah. Yep.
And I was mad. I was mad at him. I remember I was mad at him. I just wanted to reach out and, I mean, he was dead. I love him. I want to hug him. But at that moment, I wanted to smash him.
Yeah.
Because he put a huge burden on me. I mean, never mind what I was about to go through with the grieving process and losing someone that I love so much.
Yeah.
I felt the burden of having to tell my family and telling, you know, the person that loves them the most
Yeah.
that he's gone. And that, I remember that the most. As the story goes on, the hospital said, do you want to get your family members down here? And I don't even remember why, but I thought it was important. I spoke with my sisters, and we had a plan to go talk to my mom and go talk to my dad, and it was just awful. There's no question, it was just awful. And trying to be the one, at this point, I felt like I was in charge of the family, and I had to get everybody through this. And that was, you know, that was very burdensome on me, I have to admit.
Yeah.
But what I tell my students, the other image that I remember so much from that evening was, well, it was the next morning, really. When my mom went in there, the whole family went in, and they took the sheet off. And obviously the emotions, and everybody was going through their own thing, and it's very vague and hazy. But I remember my mom putting her, you know, rubbing his head. And I said, John, you didn't want her to have to do that. I knew he didn't want her to feel that. I just knew it. And that's when it hit me about this addiction thing, you know? And I tell that story to the kids as calmly as I can, in the hopes that they can maybe envision that scene, as awful as it was and as hard as it was for me to say again, because I tell them, if you don't want that the person that you love the most, if you don't want to hurt the person that you love the most, the way I saw my mom and the way I saw the hurt she had, then you have to stay away from this stuff. And what I try to tell the students at school is that you have to have a plan. If you decide right now because of that story or because of whatever you heard in health class or, you know, on TV, or if you decide right now that you don't want to do that to your mom or to your uncle or to your aunt or to whoever you love the most in your life, then you have to have a plan as to what you're going to do when the situation comes up and you're asked to partake in drugs.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think it's fantastic that you are getting the kids when they have a chance, because obviously once you get hooked, you know, your plan don't mean nothing. But
Once
what
you
you're
start
doing,
heading down that path,
Yeah,
you know, it's
I
harder
mean,
to make,
right.
you know, choices that are like more wise and more mature because you're already, you know, in with the crowd that's doing that, you know. So it just becomes like a normal thing, and then it starts like progressing, you know. Like that's what happened for me, and I mean, you're absolutely right. Like anything, I went and talked to some kids at a school. Like they were younger. They were like 10 or 11
Well, no,
or
probably
like
13.
around 12,
Yeah.
and you know, I wasn't trying to scare them when I was talking, like telling them about my story. Like you said, trying to be gentle with a situation that's really far from, you know, gentle,
Right.
but being able to tell them something that they'll remember, like what you're telling, you know, your kids, like have that image in their head, you know, get like images in their head so that when they're in that situation and they could be making a choice that could affect the rest of not only their lives but their families and everybody that's loved them or ever will love them or anything. Like the choices that we make are just like so like important, and I think a lot of times, like especially like kids look at choices as just like insignificant things, like, oh, this is what I'm going to do today, I'm going to do this tomorrow, I'm going to hang out with this one and that one. And it's just so important just to like let people know, like in kids and just anybody, like the reality of like, you know, what choices can do like for our lives and people that care about us, you know.
well, and I do know, and I've talked to other people, and they all display anger. They all display anger at the loved one for what they've done, for what, you know, for, like you said, for what, you know, your parents, your mom was going to go through, your family, anger at somebody else who got them going, everything. Now, how long, like, before the anger how long before you started to have a little bit more of an awareness of what the addiction was, that you know, you were angry at him, but you realized that he was really sick and really was with. Did you ever get to the point where you realized there really wasn't much I could do for him, or did you just carry guilt for?
Yeah, well, I mean, the guilt, I have to admit that someone had told me shortly thereafter that, you know, the drugs wasn't who he was.
Exactly.
You know, it's what he did. And that helped me a lot because it allowed me to separate, because I knew who he was. He was my loving brother. He was my idol. You know, and but I also know that it's because of what he did that caused this pain to the rest of the family and myself that we carry around to this day. I'm not going to lie. To this day, there are times when I'm angry again. I've, you know, at holidays and times when I miss him so much, I want to stomp him sometimes and say, "You dummy! You could have been here with me right now." You know, and then there are times when I obviously know that it was like, you know, he got caught up into that world and got that disease, and you know, he was helpless because he didn't know, and I couldn't help him, and he didn't know that road to addiction. I liked how you said it before. That what do you say about recovery? That it's that. You know,
what the empty chair represents?
Well, yeah, but you were talking about for this empty chairs for people who don't know that there's a life of recovery.
Right.
And that was John.
Yeah, you're right.
John never got to know that there was a life of recovery. He never, and you know, we weren't able to give him that. And maybe through this show, other people, you know, maybe other brothers are sitting there, or moms are sitting there, and they're saying, okay, you know, you can live with, you know, there's a road to recovery, and
absolutely,
and through you guys, maybe figure out how to get what you need. I mean, you did it. I look at you and I say, oh, thank God, you know, and I wish I was looking at John saying, oh, thank God, and that's the truth, you know.
And again, you know, it's very hard to put a positive spin on this, but actually you do because of what you carry on in the school. And not only that, what you bring to this show here, because, I mean, we were talking in the beginning and you said it is uncomfortable to be here and so forth like that. And a lot of people, okay, a lot of people are very embarrassed and ashamed, you know, and don't think that these are the kind of things that should be spoken out in public. It should be hidden. But, you know, by you coming here, and it is a disease, he died from a disease. And you're right. What he was and what he used is two different, you know, you do have to, you know, we do have an expression. We say, you know, love your brother, hate the disease. And you do have to separate them. And when
when I do get angry, I'm angry at the disease, and not. And you're probably right.
And
that's wonderful. Yeah, sure.
And there's nothing wrong with getting angry. You should get angry. This is a devastating disease, and
no conscience, none anything.
Whatsoever.
Like when I was using, and I had the substance in me, like my drug of choice was heroin. I mean, it was everything. I would do anything, but like, you know, that in the end, that was my drug of choice. And when I was under the influence, or when I was just caught up in all that. I didn't care. I would take his last, $20. I would lie to my mother until she cried and told me not to lie anymore, and I would lie even more and make her feel bad and just manipulate and just not care like at all. Like that's not like who I am, that's not who I was when I was a little kid, and that's not like who I am today. Like the drugs, whatever it is, it just turned you into this this monster. Not to blame like the drugs. I take responsibility for, my choices and stuff like that, but just the person that it turns you into, and awareness is just that doing stuff like this, and anything that I can do, we can do, whatever to bring more awareness about the reality of this thing, and the bad things that happen, the good things that happen, people who are willing to do anything to help somebody else, like what you're doing and what we do. I mean, my life's pretty much an open book. I'll tell anybody. I mean, obviously there's cameras on us, and we were on in the newspaper and all this stuff, because if it's gonna help somebody to maybe give them a moment of clarity, or maybe be able to identify with what I'm talking about, and they won't feel alone just for 2 seconds, and being wow, I don't feel alone. I went through that same thing, or I went through that same thing, and I want to help somebody too now, and it just kind of keeps going going like that. Like you said, there wasn't, you didn't really know too much about recovery, like, back then.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
now
really.
it's grown a little bit.
And
that's a shame.
Yeah, and it is, because here I am, because obviously I didn't know your story. I didn't know your brother had, passed away so many years ago. And here I am, I'm fighting with all these organizations and trying to get more recovery places open. And then I come to find out, actually, we've progressed quite a bit since the time of your brother. Because in all honesty, and you want to know something? 11, 12 years ago, I was one of those ones sitting on the sideline and then that figured, addicts were not very nice people. And so it's, now I know how you are. Now the rest of your family, are they all pretty much in the same, but like when it comes to the holidays and so forth like that, is you all have, I mean, I suppose there's a little bit of a hole in every holiday when you all get together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm blessed. I mean, I have a terrific family and a loving family, and we all care about each other, and we all support each other. And I think that was good for us. We kind of did it on our own because we were a family, and that's the way. So we were very blessed to have that. But as a dad, I dealt with John's story because I had two kids.
Yeah.
I can't forget telling the kids that they were younger. Obviously, at the time they were a lot younger, but they grew up with the hero worship.
Right.
And then sometimes in my mind I'd say, oh, if you only knew, but I wanted them to have the hero worship, and I liked it. I encouraged it because it made me feel good about my brother John and not remember the difficult times.
Right.
So as time went on, I struggled a bit. When was I going to tell my sons that their uncle, their favorite uncle, who's now become a superhero in their minds, how do I tell them that he was an addict and and he had a problem? So as they got into high school, I struggled with that a bit. I knew I had to come clean because I really wanted them to understand and learn from it, but at the same time, I didn't want them to lose the worship of their uncle, which was important to me and to the whole family. So, I spent some time and I spoke with Dean Bruder actually, and he was the one that kind of pushed me a little bit, and he said, no, you got to let them know that these are the realities of this thing, and I was able to do that. And my sons now, I have a son who's a freshman in college, and I have a son who's a junior in high school, and they're dealing with this issue of being around drugs and the gateway drugs. I try to tell them, I wonder what would. If John never smoked that first joint, if he never did that first line, if he never did whatever other drugs he was involved with, took that next pill, would he be where he is today? Would he be the empty chair? And, I think that through my openness and being able to talk to them and use that, when my son applied for scholarships in college, he wrote an essay about his guardian angel that gives him the strength to say no.
Wow.
And that's, terrific for me to see that maybe there is a positive spin.
Well,
it's an empty chair, and it's an awful, ugly, empty chair. And but that's what he did. It wasn't who he was. Who he was a wonderful person who to this day is helping us.
You're right. And I'm going to tell you, the best way, like I say, with me, the support group I belong to, we're usually dealing with people whose kids or loved ones are in a situation where they're already hooked and so. But what you can do, what Dean Broder does, what you did with the kids in school, you just might get to a few. You want to? I'm going to say you will get to a few. You're not going to get to all of them because kids are going to be what they are. But you know what? You're going to get to some kids, and you maybe just prevent a few of them from picking up that first joint or picking up the first drink or whatever. At least until they're at an age where they can make rational decisions. When you're 12 and 13 years old and 14 years old, they say bad choices. 12, 13, and 14-year-olds don't make bad choices. They're not old enough to make good or bad choices. They're just doing what you did to fit in.
Put in situations.
That's right.
And that's kind of my message to the kids is, and I believe in this, I believe have a plan. If you decide you don't want to be part of that, if you decide that you don't want to hurt your family, if you decide that you have a plan, because we're going to be put in situations where people are going to ask us to use or to be part of that. And you know, with my own kids, I always share with my students what I shared with my own kids. I said, if you're looking for a way out of a situation, it's crass as it sounds, I tell them, go into the bathroom and come out holding your stomach and just say, oh man, am I sick?
Yeah.
Right? And who's going to say,
idea.
who's going to, and I said, if you need to call me and you tell me, Dad, I'm really sick to my stomach, that'll be our little code.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll know, and I said, don't worry, I'll get you out of that situation. And then we're going to talk about why you were in the situation and see what we can do next time so that you're not in that situation.
Yeah.
But having a plan is so important for a 14, 13, 12, it doesn't matter the age.
Yeah. And it's getting
because
younger. Yeah.
They need to be ready.
They really do.
And that's, you know, if I had a message for young high school kids, because I see high school kids getting involved with marijuana and you know, weed, whatever you want to call it, and I hear them, you know, we're gonna spark and do this. I hear all the catchphrases all the time, you know, but there are many kids out there that look at me and say, yeah, have a plan, and go ahead and make one up, and because you have to save face. It's not easy being around a bunch of friends, and they're all doing something, and you're
right.
not doing it. And if you're not strong enough to say, I don't care what everybody else is doing, then make up a plan.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, I mean, that's my message.
It is.
And it works.
Yeah, and it's a great, and I'm so happy that we're finally getting people to get them at the grade school. One thing I did want to ask you, you did say you finally got around to talking to your sons.
Yeah.
Were you able to get them to separate the disease from their uncle as two different things?
I think so. I mean, obviously everybody processes things differently. I mean, we love John. I mean, and his memory is not that of, you know, someone that hurt us or did things that, like you said, that was, although you have to own up to them, but do things because he was, you know, addicted or anything like that.
His legacy is the hero.
Our memories are the wonderful, loving, great things, a great uncle, great brother, great.
Yeah.
And that's the legacy. That's his legacy.
Yeah.
You know, I get mad that he couldn't still be here and still partaking in some of these things. I mean, you know, he would love to see my boys do different things, and that's hurtful sometimes. But
I was so mad because I knew one of these people were going to do this to me. Say we have 2 minutes left. I hate this. I tell you, I could have gone on. You covered everything we wanted you to cover, and then some. Dave, I can't tell you how many people you're going to help through this episode for people to see it, because there are so many people that are in your position that have lost loved ones and know that you are supposed to get the pain of it. So we thank you. Before we close out, as always, I want to thank all of our volunteers. If you don't catch all of our episodes, you can go to YouTube and search The Empty Chair Show, People Who Aren't in Methuen. Again, I hope this makes you understand the significance of the empty chair. There's a name on an empty chair, and his name is John.
Yeah, I just want to. I've been getting like chills like through this whole show, but I just wanted to thank you again for coming on here and just and just being honest and just kind of laying everything out. And I know that you're going to help people with this show. You're helping people in the schools, and you help me. You know, like you've helped me just with your honesty and you know, talking about your brother. Like it's just I'm going to remember this.
Well, I want you to know that when I look at you, I'm so glad that you're not the empty chair. And I'm so proud of you, because it's not easy, and I know it's not easy. So honestly, you're very brave and courageous, and I'm glad that you're doing this.
Thank you.
Okay. And at that, we're going to say good night. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. Please watch this. This is some pretty powerful stuff. Thank you and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Wonderful. Did one.